Joining us is Harries, who is Vice President of Research and Operations for Kansas Wheat. We're going to talk about the Quality Council Winter Wheat Tour. Hi, Aaron.
Hello, Ken.
Well, in the past we have done this, and maybe a little bit earlier because the tour was a little earlier. But give us the general overall observations of what you and the folks saw on the tour this year.
Well, first, we were glad to have an actual tour this year out in the field and have some people in person, and that's why we did have the tour a couple of weeks later to try to get past the COVID thing and get as many people vaccinated as possible on the tour. Overall, I think the group, since it was a couple weeks later, we saw the wheat crop, I think, at its maximum potential. It was probably as good as it's going to look at that point in time, and we all know there are a lot of things that will happen between now and harvest that may not, make that crop look as good when harvest comes. But we did see some good numbers. I think most everybody was a little bit surprised by how good the yield reports were on Monday. But what distinguishes this tour is the formula we use. We're able to count actual wheat heads because most of the wheat was headed. Where if it was earlier in the year, we're counting individual tillers, and then the formula accounts for some of those tillers being lost. So when you're counting heads, you're actually getting more of a yield calculation. So it hypothetically should be more accurate. And so ultimately the tour, after our 3 days, the group released a prediction of 365 million bushels for Kansas, which is above our 5-year rolling average, which is around 330 million bushels, which is where USDA had it pegged.
Well, those numbers that came out, it did catch many of us by surprise, knowing there were some places, but we did hear some reports earlier that there were pockets that, especially in the southwestern part of the state, that wheat was really being a challenge this early spring.
And it is a credit a little bit to wheat genetics as how long some of that wheat was able to hold on in the dry conditions. Now, the southwest corner, I think those rains came too late. That crop is certainly going to be impacted by the drought. And we're talking the 4 extreme southwest counties. But in south central Kansas, there's a few counties, Sumner, Sedgwick, Harper, that have been really dry too. And it's just amazing what the plant can do. A little bit of rain, the bottom half of the plant was almost dead. And then the top half of the plant has a green stem, 2 green leaves, and a head on it. So that indicates that that plant got a little shower and recovered from it. But only time will tell how much that yield is going to impact that. So, I should be clear that the average, if you average it 3 days, you get an average yield for Kansas for around 58 bushels per acre. But that's not what the group is predicting. That 365 million bushels is the number the group assesses after they take into account disease pressure and anticipation of weather and things like that. So 365 million bushels, if you do that on 6.9 or 7 million acres, that comes out around to 52 to 53 bushels per acre for the state average. And that's far below the average record of 57, which was set back in 2016.
We're talking with Aaron Harries, Kansas Wheat, about the wheat tour that just finished up a few days ago. We'll be back and continue this conversation in just a moment. And our guest this week is Aaron Harries, who is the Vice President of Research and Operations for Kansas Wheat, as we talk about this year's winter wheat tour. And Aaron, we talked about the numbers. Let's also talk about the other things that go into consideration, and that is, as you mentioned, some disease pressures that could maybe knock some of the yield potential out.
That certainly is the case. There are 2 types of fungus diseases we talk about, stripe rust and leaf rust. And we did see stripe rust pressure in a lot of the fields around the state, but farmers had really gotten ahead of that. You could tell there were tracks in the field or airplanes out spraying fungicide, and so the stripe rust was kept in check in most places. But striped rust likes the cooler weather we've been having in the 60s and 70s. But now the warmer temperatures open the door for leaf rust, which really likes temperatures that are warmer in the 80s. So if we continue to have a rainy, wet pattern, which we've had for days now, it seems like in Kansas, and these warmer temperatures, it's really going to be a race to the finish line because there comes a cutoff point where farmers can't go out and spray fungicides anymore. There's an interval between spraying and harvest that they have to abide by. And if you can't get in the fields before they're muddy. So we hope to get this grain developed before the rust really takes over and resurges in those fields.
We're about to wrap up May, so it is just a few more weeks now. It will be starting in the south with wheat. Rain is we never want to curse any moisture,
Yeah.
but maybe good for the corn and soybeans. But wheat, it's a little bit different animal. We don't want to have a deluge, if you will, as it's turning and making those final preps to be harvested.
Right, and we did see a lot of fields that were standing in water. I mean, we were splashing around in some water in some parts of the state. That water just doesn't drain very well, and wheat doesn't like wet feed either. And then you hinted at another thing. If it's raining when the wheat head is flowering and filling the grain, we have to worry about fusarium head blight or scab. And then we didn't mention wheat streak mosaic virus, which has been a real problem in west central into central Kansas, which is another viral disease that really does impact yields, and that's through a curl mite that lives in volunteer wheat. So it's we often emphasize of control your volunteer wheat so we can keep wheat streak mosaic virus down. So all in all, we had that big yield estimate, but what you and I have been just talking about for the past few minutes is things that typically tend to bring yield down. We'll see how the next few weeks play out. Like you said, we're still probably a good month away from harvest, and a lot of different things are going to happen.
Well, Aaron, we could talk more, but if folks want to learn more, I know they can go to the Kansas Wheat website, and there's a nice, concise wrap up of everything that took place and some observations on the wheat tours. We'll encourage folks to go there.
Yep, kansaswheat.org. We've got all those reports archived on there, and so you can see all the details from all 3 days of the tour. And you can also sign up for harvest reports. We do those on a daily basis when harvest gets underway, and you can sign up to receive those reports.
All right, Aaron, as always, thanks for the update, and we wish everybody great luck during harvest.
Yeah, I hope everyone has a safe and successful harvest. Thanks, Ken.
Aaron Harries, Vice President of Research and Operations for Kansas Wheat, has joined us. Stay with us. We'll have more coming up.